We will open our meeting with a moment of silence, followed by the third step prayer found on page 63 of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And now a moment of silence. And the third step prayer. God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, the victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. On page 159 and 160 in the big book, it states, it became customary to set apart one night a week for a meeting to be attended by anyone or everyone interested in a spiritual way of life. I'm Tina. Welcome to the Sunday Big Book Study for anyone and everyone interested in a spiritual way of life. We encourage everyone to participate in our meeting via video link if possible. Please mute your device. If you are phoning in, you do that by pressing *6. We are a step study which meets each week at this time. Our group is a spiritual entity having one primary purpose, that of carrying the message to the person who still suffers. This is our primary spiritual aim. Our group provides people with a place to learn about and work the steps. It has been our experience that working the steps consistently provides us with a better, saner life. The Big Book of AA is our textbook. Time and experience have proven it to be the most successful approach to the steps. Remember, what is shared at the meeting is private. For traditions 1 and 12, please, who you see here, what you hear here, when you leave here, let it stay here. This includes no use of recording devices of any kind. A sponsor is anyone who has had a spiritual awakening as the result of working the steps and has the willingness to work with others. Near the end of the meeting, we will have sponsors announce themselves, their program affiliations, and their contact information. We will also have introductions of those new or returning to this meeting. And I've asked Heather to please read our foundation review today. Thanks, Heather.
Thanks, Tina. The purpose of this meeting is to study the Big Book of AA to help the alcoholic, sex addict, S-anonic, drug addict, love addict, workaholic, OA, codependent, ACA, and others, all who suffer, know what the problem is, what the solution is, and how to take the action that is necessary to recover from a hopeless state of mind and body, to get from the problem to the solution. On page XIII, it states, we of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. This tells us who authored the book, 100 men and women who recovered. They found a solution and passed on how they recovered. They all had the same problem, a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. They all recovered the same way, using the precise instructions in the Big Book. If we follow these directions with a recovered sponsor, we will recover too. Recovered is different from cured. If we go to the doctor with a broken arm and follow the doctor's instructions, we will recover, but we will still be breakable. Steps 1 through 9 get us recovered, and steps 10, 11, and 12 worked each day keep us that way. We are not cured, we are recovered. It goes on. We hope these pages will prove so convincing that no further authentication will be necessary. In the 30s, they worked with rock bottom alcoholics, people who tried every other way to get better. They were desperate. When it was suggested there was a new way to recover, the 12 steps, they worked it like drowning people. That is what happened for us. We tried everything, nothing worked. Our seemingly hopeless state brought us to our bottom and made us willing to take the necessary actions to recover. This is step 1. It also says, we think this account of our experience will help everyone to better understand the alcoholic. Many do not comprehend that the alcoholic is a very sick person. Alcoholics and the rest of us are not bad people. We are simply suffering. It continues. We are sure that our way of living has its advantages for all. This program was created to help alcoholics. Quickly, they realized family members of alcoholics had this spiritual sickness and needed help. The steps worked for them too. Then drug addicts and overeaters realized that they could adapt this program to recover. Seemingly hopeless people all over the world, like us, found that they could work the 12 steps and recover too. Page XIV tells us what's required to be a member in a 12-step fellowship. The only requirement for membership is an honest desire to stop drinking. What does that mean? We don't want to live like this anymore. No matter what we try, we're miserable. We can't get enough alcohol, drugs, selfish sexual behavior, food, money, prestige, things, stuff, approval, attention, devotion, control, etc. And we could not stop trying to get someone or something on the outside to make us feel better on the inside. With enough pain, we came to a desire to stop living like this for good and all and begin practicing these principles in all our affairs. That's what's required for membership. We simply say, I want to stop. I can't live like this anymore. When the newcomer sees a person like them who has recovered, it gives them hope, and he or she asks for help. These are steps 2 and 3. The recovered person passes on these precise instructions. That's how it spread from Akron to New York City, over to Cleveland, and eventually around the world. Our purpose is to study the Big Book of AA in order to help all who suffer know what a spiritual malady is, what the solution is, and how to take the action that is necessary to recover from a hopeless state of mind and body, to get from the problem to the solution. Welcome.
Thank you, Heather. Okay, just as a reminder, our meeting voted to have 4 speaker meetings a year. Those meetings will be recorded, and the audio only portion of those meetings will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. All right, so today is our speaker meeting, and Nicole from Texas is our speaker. I met Nicole on an S-Anon phone meeting in August of 2015. We worked the 12 steps together in 30 days for S-Anon, Al-Anon, Love Addiction, and CODA. We became fellows and created sponsor documents and meeting scripts with a team of others. We worked with another team of fellows to organize the No Human Power Conference in Dallas, Texas, October 4th through the 6th in 2019, and worked with another team of fellows and created the Meeting for All podcast from October 2023 to September 2024. I love Nicole and admire her recovery. She has carried this message to more than 100 women. Nicole is proof of a loving God. Thank you for sharing your story with us today, Nicole.
Thank you, Tina. I love you. Hello, I am Nicole, and I am an Al-Anon, S-Anon, codependent, and love addict. and recovered following the directions in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous with a recovered sponsor. I figured we could begin at the beginning, and I'm going to read my story. I grew up in volatility and chaos in a family affected by sex addiction, codependency, and NPD. My mother was cruel and unyielding. My father was physically violent, raging, and terrifying. I was one of 4 siblings. Something was deeply and undeniably wrong, and my family needed a cause, a source to avoid facing difficult truths. And I became the object of our troubles. I was singled out for emotional and physical abuse, and my sisters were enlisted. When I say physical abuse, I was beaten with belts, thrown into walls, dragged by the hair, locked in closets and cars overnight, had hair grabbed and cut off at the roots. I'm describing what it looked like for the person out there who might say that sounds like me. I had never considered those aspects of my family dysfunction in the context of addiction. Everyone had a job to do, including protecting the family narrative. And each sibling found a way to stay safe. Some acted as the image to guard the family's secrets from the outside world. Some stayed invisible or acted as the deflector, and I was the scapegoat. My earliest memories revolve around the feeling I was different, separate, unlovable, unwantable, and unsafe. I found a way to get belonging by absorbing the problems of others. I believed I was fundamentally bad, and what was happening was my fault. It was the beginning of an old idea which I would spend a lifetime trying to change or fix. It's me. My father began sexually acting out with me when I was 15. In the beginning, I denied what was happening. I thought it was me. He didn't mean to. I was bad for thinking he was doing something bad. When I couldn't deny it anymore, I employed strategies or thought if I showed no expression or indication I knew what was happening, I could find a way to stay safe. This went on for several years. One day I came home and my mother was gone, and she called to say she had left my father, taken my siblings, and she didn't want me. That moment was the beginning of a bottomless anger I would carry with me until I found recovery. I knew I didn't deserve what she had said and done, and I was alone in a house with him. There was an acting out moment with my father, and when it was over, I started vomiting, and I began to pull my hair out. I pulled out all of the hair in the top of my head in one day. For the next few years, I was unable to keep food down and was put on ulcer medications, and I continued to pull out my hair and wore hats to cover. There was a numbness after I pulled out the hair, and I lived for that numbness. I had found my first metaphorical drink. It is called trichotillomania, and it's associated with PTSD. At 17, I was completely broken. I could not go on living in my circumstances, and when the next crisis arrived, I saw only 3 choices. I would go insane, I would end it, or I had to run that very day. It wasn't self-worth that set me on my feet, it was anger. Child Protective Services became involved, and once the family secrets were out, the gates came down. They changed the locks, said I was a liar, cut off all communication. My father called to say I was no longer a member of his family. A friend's mother gave me a place to stay and said I could stay forever. All I wanted was to leave. I left their home and moved across the country a little less than a year after they took me in. Years later, I moved back home and they became my family. Once I moved away, I was obsessed with 3 ideas. I was going to be normal, happy, and I was going to succeed. I would earn and prove my worth. I grabbed onto succeeding to keep myself from drowning, but eventually success wasn't enough. I needed more. So I focused on trying to get love, a relationship. I thought it was the thing missing that would make me feel better. I was not ready for any kind of emotional or physical intimacy, but I had an idea I could conquer what had happened to me if I shut it out and forced my way through. I wanted to be like everybody else, have what they had. I wasn't like everybody else, and I couldn't hide or cover. It didn't work. The more I failed, the more desperate my thinking and actions became. I never wanted to expose how abnormal I was again, but I couldn't quit. My drive to get love was relentless. Each time I met someone, I saw them as the one that could save me from my misery. I wanted to get normal, which is one of my metaphorical drinks. I repeated the same relationship patterns over and over. I tried changing people, locations, and wherever I went, similar problems showed up. I could see I was the common denominator, but each time I tried to change, I found myself back in the same place in a deeper hole. I kept trying to solve the puzzle of what was wrong with me. If I could fix myself, then I could get love. I tried self-help, counseling, and spiritual practices. Nothing worked. I never related to religious concepts of God, but I did believe in something. I believed I was alone. My attitude towards God was there was some universal force, and it was cruel and unyielding. It would get me close enough to know what I was missing before it took it away. God or the universe's cruelty was the game, and I was going to beat it. I was going to get happiness in spite of God. On page 23 of the Big Book of AA, it says, there is the obsession that somehow, some way, they will beat the game. I moved back home, and my adopted mother died within a few years from heart failure from a lifetime addiction to smoking. She was the reason the family took me in, and when she died, I felt like I was falling without a net. I looked to her to get belonging, and once she was gone, everything that connected me to our family, I thought went with her. I met my husband a month after she passed, and he proposed shortly after we met. When he proposed, I wasn't thinking about what I was going to bring to him and our relationship, how I could share and give love to him every day, how I could be the best partner I could be. I said yes because I had finally gotten what I thought I wanted. Someone wanted me. I married into sex addiction and alcoholism, and my addictions began to spiral. At first, I tried participating in drinking to get belonging, but I didn't enjoy it, so I became the designated driver. My watching and monitoring got worse as the drinking got worse. I was participating in things I resented, making bail, getting cars out of impound. I was hiding liquor, trying anything I could think of to control it. I was obsessed with trying to get him to stop. My problems were piling up on me, and eventually one problem became indistinguishable from the next. Everywhere I looked, I saw metaphors for what I thought was the problem. And I was still trying to solve that one. And it wasn't working because I thought the problem was the repeating patterns in my life, why I was unlovable, the sex addiction, alcoholism, that he wouldn't stop. Those were the problems I was trying to solve. I didn't know yet what I had was a spiritual problem. I thought if he stopped, I would feel better. Eventually, he did stop drinking, and I had an obsessive thought he wasn't being honest about his sobriety. It ended with me crawling into a recycling bin to see if I could find alcohol bottles hidden in the bottom. It started to occur to me I was acting insane. And even though I got the thing I thought I wanted, he quit drinking, I didn't feel better. I was still spinning out. When thinking about what my sprees looked like, the one that keeps coming to mind strikes me as funny. We had just moved into our first house, and I was going up the walk, and I saw in the corner of my eye, we had weeds that looked like sticker plants, which where we live is a weed that's covered with sharp pointed birds. It started with a fearful thought that turned into self-obsession. I was afraid if we didn't deal with the stickers, our dog was going to get stickers in his paws and get hurt. So I started researching how to kill sticker plants. And then I went outside to assess the problem, and I realized the lawn wasn't grass, it was all weeds, and my brain short-circuited. I would love to know if any of the new neighbors were witnessing the clown show that was happening in the front yard. My husband was on the porch drinking, and I was in the lawn sobbing. And I was saying, we have to stop it. It's spreading. And the only way to stop it is to pull up every single one. But it won't matter because they'll just keep coming back because the soil isn't healthy. Nothing will ever grow here. It's everywhere. And my husband took a drink and said, those aren't weeds, they're green. And I lost my ever-loving mind because if I couldn't convince him, he wasn't going to help me try and get control over it. And I was going to be on my own, and the problem was too big for me. And I was talking about all of it, our relationship, the addictions, how baffled I was, and our dog getting a boo-boo in his paw. But what takes it from a level 1 concern to a level 10 emergency in my brain is if I don't watch for and discover every possible thing that could cause harm and stop it, and someone gets upset or mad or hurt, then I'm the one that hurt them. I am the cause because I believe that's the truth about me. And if I can't find a way to fix being the cause, I'm never going to get love. And that's what I was spinning out about. I had lost control, and I was trying to convince him in every possible avenue available to me that we had a problem and he had a problem. When my problem was my thinking. I'm out here in a hostile world alone. I am without God. I discovered sexual acting out behaviors early in our relationship and hit a bottom which would last for many years. First, I blamed myself, and then I blamed him. I had no regard for his privacy. I yelled and said terrible things to try and get control over his behaviors. I never considered his struggles and that he might be drowning too. When I couldn't control him, I lost control of everything else. I was lashing out. I tried not caring. I isolated. I stopped communicating with every friend I had. I was completely self-obsessed. During this time, my adopted dad had a stroke and they told us he was going to die. I was becoming aware of my powerlessness and I was doing everything I could to avoid life. I was overworking. I couldn't sleep. I would wake up in the middle of the night to sexual acting out and drinking. I was in a constant state of resentment and panic. Late one night, a call came and I thought my adopted dad had died. But it was my adopted brother saying my adopted sister had been taken by ambulance to the hospital. My husband and I drove to the hospital and my brain was spinning out. She had been using drugs for years. I said, how could she do this to me? How could she be partying while dad is dying? I thought she was making a choice. I thought she was partying. I thought she could stop and she was wasting her beautiful life. What was really churning the water underneath my anger was, if this madness doesn't stop, if people don't get in line, I am never going to get what I want. I will never be normal. I made my sister suffering about me. She died from an overdose and she was 38 years old. My adopted dad died, and along with another crisis I couldn't control, I finally hit the mat, and this time I couldn't get up. I went to an Al-Anon meeting, and for the first time, I began to understand addiction, and I was desperate enough to listen. I learned addiction isn't a choice, and once we have passed the point of human aid, there is little hope we will ever be able to quit on our own willpower. I understood this because I couldn't stop. I couldn't quit my behaviors and patterns. I wasn't any different. I was the same. And with that thought, compassion entered my heart. Al-Anon led me to Es-Anon, and during my first meeting, I heard the phrase, there was sex addiction in my family of origin. It was as if grace stepped in and I could see clearly for the first time the connective thread of addiction in every relationship I had ever had. I had grown up in a family of addiction. I was an addict and trying to get something on the outside to make me feel better on the inside. I found a primary purpose meeting and I heard people who said they had recovered. They sounded like they had gotten a hold of something, a lightness in their beings, and something I wanted: relief. When I heard some of the symptoms of addiction, obsessing, focusing on others, controlling, blaming, fixing, managing, trying to get love, those behaviors were so much a part of my existence, I never questioned them, and that they were symptoms we shared. I found a sponsor and asked for help, and she took me through the steps in 30 days using the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. When I read the first 60 pages and saw this was a spiritual program, this was about God, my heart dropped. Anything but that. When the question was asked, and I made a decision, was I willing to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity? I didn't believe in God. I was willing to believe because I did believe in the hopelessness of life that I had been living and my hopelessness and powerlessness to change it. I was out of ideas. I didn't have any hope it would work. I was given a thought which helped me through. And I thought, what if I don't know everything? That was all that was needed: willingness. My desperation had made me willing. I had surrendered and taken steps 1, 2, and 3. Working steps 4 through 9 helped me to see my own behaviors and that they were a result of my sickness and suffering, living life on self-will without a higher power. I began to understand my self-centered thinking around my biological family. It wasn't about me. My sponsor said there was a hurricane blowing and we just happened to be standing there. I began to see my circumstances and my suffering were of my own making. The relief came when I turned from blaming everyone else for my misery, and I searched for and found ways in which I was doing the things I was mad at everybody else for. When I took responsibility for my own actions and my harms, my resentments began to lift. And what was really making me miserable is I had lost my connection to love, my higher power, my true purpose. I did my first amends, step 9, and I felt relief. Then my sponsor said to prepare my amends for my mother, and I hit the brakes. I started to explain my sound reasoning for my resistance, and my sponsor gently interrupted. She shared some hope around one of her amends, and then she said, "You don't have to want to do it. You just have to do it." I was looking for the want when this was about willingness. What I was being faced with was a decision. I could keep being right and miserable, or I could walk through all my reasons not to and do it anyway. My sponsor gave me the directions to begin step 12 immediately, to sponsor others like me and proactively search for people I could help. I said, I have no idea what I'm doing. I haven't figured my own life out yet. She said, we don't get better and help others. We get better by helping others. This has been my experience. I've grown in understanding and effectiveness in my own recovery in the practice of sponsoring. I have so much love for everyone I sponsor. They've helped me more than they will ever know. And the greatest joy of sponsorship is watching those we sponsor to go on and help others like them. Sponsoring keeps me in the flow of love and give. It's such a relief each time I grow in understanding about how insignificant my role is in helping others. It's simply passing on these precise directions. The real work is getting out of the way. There's a wonderful circle where the third step prayer, step 10, 11, and 12 connect. Take away my difficulties that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help, of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. I will work on a 10th step, and a sponsee will send a 10th step around similar ideas. What I was just able to learn and was helped with by my sponsor, I'm able to turn around and be helpful to others around. I used to want my difficulties to be removed so I could feel better. What makes me feel better immediately is the opportunity to employ that difficulty in service for others. And I have so much love and gratitude for my sponsor. I know my higher power directed me right where I needed to be. A month after I worked the steps, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I thought, I trust God, and this is what happens. Working the steps helped me to see it from a different point of view. Maybe this was an opportunity to be rid of all of those old stories about God. It says in the big book on page 53, God is either everything or else he is nothing. He either is or he isn't. What was our choice to be? I made a decision. I worked the steps and turned all of my obsessing into sponsoring others and helping find blankets for care packages for patients going through chemotherapy. Every spare moment I had, I was sponsoring or frantically digging through retail bins, holding on to giving with both hands. Doctors, help, and situations lined up without any effort on my part. A higher power was there every step of the way. When I think about going through breast cancer, what I remember is how I felt free. Working steps 10, 11, and 12 continues to help me see my dishonesty around the idea of self-sacrifice for others. Before recovery, I thought it's all I did. I thought the resentment stemmed from doing too much. When I began to consider the question, am I giving to give without expecting anything in return? And am I guided to help with this, or are they acts of selfishness, self-seeking, fear, and dishonesty? The truth about my self-sacrifice started to become clear. I often had a motive. I sacrificed this or that so I might be able to control outcomes, or I sacrificed to get love, approval, liked, appreciated, or to manage how I wanted others to think about me. I thought about what would make people happy so they would like me. For example, every holiday, my husband's parents would come into town and I had a to-do list that would not end, making sure the house was cleaned to ridiculous ends, buying all the presents I thought everyone wanted, spending money I didn't have to spend. I made sure decorations that were gifted were on display so no one's feelings got hurt, I thought, rather than to avoid not being liked. I did 10 steps and stated the problem. I have so much I have to do and no help. And it occurred to me, who said I have to do this stuff? I made up the list, and every item on it was all about how I looked, getting approval, belonging, liked, or to avoid not getting those things. And then I wanted my husband to get on board with my self-seeking and was resentful when he didn't want to come along. My sponsor asked what my new ideal and action was. I said I could write on Post-it notes everything I thought had to happen and put it on the door. The door was covered. And then day by day, I asked, what would I do if I already had worth? What would love have me do? What would my higher power have me do? And then I chose whatever I felt led to choose. I love sending cards during the holidays, and I always wanted time to write something special for each person. I had this picture of me sitting by the fire, writing cards, and every year I never got to it. Instead, it was a picture of me cursing out the vacuum for sucking up curtains I was cleaning so people would approve of me. It isn't that I didn't have time, it's that when I'm in self-seeking, I never run out of stuff to do. I didn't end up doing most of the stuff I had to do on the door. I had a great time. I did those cards, and I spent my time and energy thinking about how I could share and give love without trying to get anything at all, just for the joy of giving. My husband asked, "What's up with the Post-its?" And I said, I'm doing something different. I'm going to choose a few things every day or not. Whatever doesn't get done falls off. I came home one day and half the notes were gone. My husband had music on and was singing while cleaning the bathroom. And I laughed and I said, well, what are you up to? And he said, I did some dues. He was beaming and having a great time. And I didn't ask him to help. He just did it for the joy of giving. When I get into give, life begins to cooperate. On page 84, it says, we will intuitively begin to know how to handle situations that used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. So, you know how I love a metaphor. I am so limited in my ability to solve the fear problem. My sponsor gave me a God box, and I just love it. The idea is whenever I'm in fear or I have a problem I don't know what to do about, I write it on a piece of paper and I put it in the box, and then it's out of my hands. Once I turn it over to God, I relax and take it easy and trust the right answer will come. And then I immediately seek to be helpful to someone. The first time I went to write down my problem, the box is small, and I thought, oh no, what if I run out of room in my God box? So I wrote my trouble in the teeniest letters I could possibly write and took out scissors and cut the paper as close as I could around the problem and folded it origami style 8 times over itself until it was a tiny triangle, and I put it in the box. I spent months and 20 minutes each time I was turning over the problem and getting into the solution until it dawned on me I'm in future and I'm in fear. Once I saw what I was up to, the solutions started flowing and I began laughing. When I'm in fear, I can't see 2 feet in front of my face, and I go to all sorts of absurd lengths using my human solutions, solving problems which haven't even happened yet. I'm blocked from any real solutions. When I saw what I was up to, the possibilities began to dawn on me. The most obvious solution being, I can just buy another box. I mean, what do I think? There's never going to be another one. I give belief to lack and not enough and always being on the losing end of something. Then I thought I could just go out to the garage and pull out one of the boxes I have out there. I have 15 solutions laying around that I don't think to use because I stored them in there for another problem that hasn't happened yet. Now, when I'm in fear, I acknowledge my powerlessness. I'm in a job which is way too big for me, and a job I was never meant to have. I just have to stay in my 2 jobs, staying close to higher power and being of service. I still face challenges and difficulties every day. What is different now is I don't have problems. I have symptoms. I have attitudes, suffering around what I think are my problems. And if my problems aren't my problems, if my suffering and attitudes are a symptom of my problem, and ultimately my real problem is I'm in self-will, self-reliance, self-seeking, selfish and self-centered thinking, dishonesty, fear, and not considering others. I think I am without my higher power. I can do something about that. In any moment, I can make a decision to turn toward the solution. My husband was diagnosed with cancer and he passed away. I am so grateful for recovery and the time I was given to love him. I know when we met, I fell in love with him, his heart, and who he was. And then I put my addictions in the front seat. I was blocked from accessing everything that was lovable about him. And not because he wasn't lovable. It's because the experience of loving wasn't available to me. I was blocked, consumed that our marriage wasn't what I wanted it to be, what I thought it could be, consumed with wanting to escape my past, and I couldn't do it. And when sex addiction showed up in our marriage, I lost all hope that I was ever going to outrun it. And even though I lost hope, I kept trying to do the same stuff I'd always done to fix or change it. I had nothing else to throw at it because I didn't have God. I didn't have any higher power at all. I was running on pure self-will and self-reliance. I had become open once I recovered to be able to reflect back what was lovable about my husband. This is what is lovable about you, and give it away. I began to learn what it meant to have emotional intimacy, 2 autonomous beings, and my being okay isn't dependent on what you're going to say next. And I would love to know what you're going to say next, just to know you. The prayer of St. Francis, which isn't in the big book, it's a prayer the alcoholics kind of brought into the fold. Part of that prayer is wanting to understand more than wanting to be understood, wanting to love more than wanting to get love. And I had time and opportunity to practice those things. So I'm grateful for recovery and the time that we had and every moment I was given to love him. After my husband passed away, I dragged out all my old ideas about God, and I was drowning in self-pity. I couldn't move. I didn't want to move. I just kept collecting pain until I was in enough pain I had to take action. But I was too mad making stuff up about God to turn to my real solution, so I went back to old strategies. Everywhere I looked in our home was his life, our life together, and all I could see was that he was gone. I had no idea what to do next, but I knew I was going to have to begin somewhere. My husband was an entertainer, and our garage is a place where old equipment goes to live out their senior years in their retirement community. And most of the equipment is decades old, weighs no less than 40 pounds, and is the size of a Great Dane. So I figured I would begin there. My old strategy is face it. Drag the problem out into the light. If I face it, it will go away. I am going to wrestle this grief to the ground. A neighbor helped me drag all of it into the living room, and when I finally stopped, I was completely overcome with fear, and I couldn't move again because there was no room to move. I had no idea what to do with any of it. I couldn't ship it, sell it. I couldn't even lift it. So my neighbor said there was a reseller locally who bought this stuff. On the way there, I was spinning. What was I going to do with this grief? This was only a tiny part of our whole lives, and I was obsessing about the size of what I was facing, emotionally, physically, spiritually. I learned there was about $1,300 in used equipment. When I arrived, he offered me $100, and I said, fine. I couldn't imagine dragging that part of the problem back into the living room. On the way home, my hiney was on fire, like I had just been stung by a bee. And I thought that did not feel good. I went home and did a 10 step, and I could see I was in fear and self-reliance. I admitted the defects of character, and my sponsor said, "What's your new ideal? What would it look like?" And I said, "I want him to be honored. I love his things because he loved his things. I would love to see them go on to serve a joyful purpose. My time would have worth. I would love the person who receives them to be so excited about this amazing deal they got, and I would like to walk away equal." I turned to help a sponsee, and afterwards an inspired thought came to contact some local entertainers. I sent 4 emails, and in less than 30 minutes, someone wrote back. I met him the next day, and he pulled up in a rig similar to the one my husband used to drive when he was in this field of entertaining. He had just finished a job, and he was sharing about his day and the show he had just performed. And as we talked, I felt this calm come over me. It was as if some window in space and time had opened up, and God, love, created a place for me to talk with my husband again. And I really needed that. When we finished, he was so excited about the deal. And then he said, "I'm taking this over to a church I attend. They have a program for at-risk youth and recently had a fire and they lost everything." I was completely floored. I said, "I don't even know how to say how much I appreciate what you just shared and that his things will go on for that purpose." And I said, "My husband would have loved it too." I didn't think it could get any better. The next day, I received a text. He had sent me a video of the church gym full of young people. The equipment he had bought was in use. The music was pumping, the lights were going, and the kids were jumping up and down all together and singing in unison. It brought me to tears. We may not get what we want, but if we work to remove the obstacles in our path and stay close to love, to God, we might get what we didn't even know we needed. On page 100, the chapter Working with Others, they say, "When we look back, we realize the things which came to us when we put ourselves in God's hands were better than anything we could have planned. Follow the dictates of a higher power, and you will presently live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what your present circumstances. Higher power is to me now a force of love, goodness, kindness, and can be found in true self-sacrifice for others. Working the steps has given me a desire to be but a small part of a great whole. Instead of spinning into space alone, I am in this beautiful patched together old ship, shoulder to shoulder with my fellows. With each hand reaching out to help, our fellowship grows. As our fellowship grows, our boat grows. There is infinite room. There is infinite capacity. I love you all. You have opened up rooms in my heart I never knew before arriving in recovery. This is my journey to a higher power. I have ceased fighting it. I don't want a different ship. I am a recovered S-Anon, codependent, Al-Anon, and love addict. That is who I am, who I've always been. I am so grateful I'm finally home, and I'm happy to help. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Nicole.